What's going on, guys? Bobby Betts Fights back again for another week of UFC fights, another week of UFC breakdowns. So this time we got a UFC fight night at the Apex. Sean Strickland headlining against Abus Magomedov. Going to be a good card, some interesting matchups. Before we jump into that and give you a breakdown, I'm going to go ahead and recap the previous week. So another monster week for Bobby Betts. Clean sweep across the board, 5-0. I'm going to jump into each one of these and go through them just to break them down and see what we did. So I'm going to go ahead and start off with the straight plays. So first bet, Jose Mariscal against Trevor Peek. Got him at plus 105. He ended up winning a 30-27 unanimous decision. Pretty dominant performance by Mariscal. He was able to get Peek to the ground. He was able to mix in his wrestling, and Trevor Peek throwing those wild shots. Mariscal was able to counter him, and he had control of the fight pretty much the whole time. It was a wildly entertaining fight. Peek definitely landed some big shots, but Mariscal, being as durable as possible, durable as anyone, I should say, was able to eat him and just keep doing his own work. So as I mentioned on the previous breakdown, I thought that fight was going to go over 1.5 rounds, probably see a second or third, and was going to be a fight of the night contender, and boy was it ever. Hit the nail on the head there. So Chepe Mariscal plus 105 was a winner. Next bet, Tabitha Ricci, got her at minus 130 against Jillian Robertson. Close decision, back and forth fight. Their wrestling and their jiu-jitsu canceled each other out. Ricci ended up on top more. Jillian Robertson was on the bottom for most part as far as the grappling exchanges, but not a lot of strikes being landed on the feet. A little pitter-patter back and forth, but Tabitha Ricci ended up edging it out in the end. I think it was a 29-28 across the board unanimous decision. So minus 130 for 1.1 units, 0.85 units worth of profit. Next, we had Mateusz Rebecki versus Loic Ruziboev, and I took Rebecki at minus 132. Interesting line because he blew up to about minus 155, and then on the day of the fight, a lot of steam came in on Ruziboev, dropped about 25 cents, so you could have got Rebecki back around minus 125 before the fight started, but he looked dominant. He chopped out the legs of Loic Ruziboev. Ruziboev couldn't use his wrestling, looping these overhands, ended up hurting him with the leg kicks. And Ruziboev was just, on wobbly legs. And then Mateusz Rebecki got him up against the cage, teed off on him. He went down. He was still fighting, but they stopped the fight. I thought it was a good stoppage because Ruziboev looked like he had nothing left in the tank. And both legs were being chopped by Rebecki. I don't think he really had much left in him as far as that fight. So that was out of all of the picks, that was the least sweatiest one at minus 132, 1.1 units on Mateusz Rebecki. That's a W. And then we had Neil Magny versus Phil Rowe at minus 150. That was an odd fight because I thought Phil Rowe, if he would have just done what he did in the first round and threw punches, he could have won that fight. But second round comes around, I guess Magny's, his typical clinch work just started to wear on Rowe, and Magny won the last 2 rounds. So 29-28, it ended up being a split decision. One person saw it for Rowe. Rowe was able to backpack Magny in the second round, get that ride control time, but he just didn't throw punches. He was standing right in front of him, and all he had to do was punch. Magny's not the most slickest counter striker, but hey, I'll take it. Minus 150 for 1.5 units. That's going to get us exactly 1 unit's worth of profit. So that was another W. And then we had a parlay. We had Randy Brown to win at minus 240 and Brendan Allen to win at minus 195. Randy Brown against Wellington Thurman, typical Randy Brown fight. Poke and prod with the jab. Mix in some clinch work. I thought Wellington Thurman had an argument to win that fight. It ended up being a unanimous decision, 29-28. Wellington Thurman definitely won the third round. It was a close second and a close first round. But again, Randy Brown eking out another decision. Minus 240, I don't know if he covered it in that fight. I think Wellington Thurman as a dog was actually the play there. But we ended up getting the win, got the decision, so no complaints there. And then Brendan Allen against Bruno Silva, absolute masterclass. He got rocked, and Allen, you can tell that his striking's advanced. He stayed in the pocket. He was able to land his shots back on Bruno Silva, ended up, I believe, clipping him behind the ear, wobbling him, got him down, and he just peeked up at the clock. Clock's ticking down. There's like 40 seconds left in the round. Could have done some ground and pound, but Silva was doing a good job of kind of turtling up and recovering, but doing just enough to not have the fight get stopped. So what does Allen do? Able to slide that forearm in right underneath of the neck, ended up choking him out. So that was a W. That parlay odds, we got plus 114 on that, so 1.14 units worth of profit. So ended up taking home, as far as profit, $243.63 on that. So as far as total profit, haven't calculated it out, but should be somewhere in the $1,600s to $1,700. As last week we were around 1,409. So if we do some quick mental math, 1,400 plus 243, yeah, that's going to put us right around like $1,650 and some odd change. So we are rolling, baby, and we're going to roll right into this card for this breakdown of Strickland versus Magomedov. So we're going to go ahead and start off with the first fight on the prelims, go all the way up through to the main event. So kind of an interesting one to kick us off. We got Alexander Romanov versus Blagoy Ivanov, and these odds haven't moved at all. Romanov's minus 135 favorite, Ivanov's plus 115. Romanov moved up to minus 140, but he's back down to minus 135, so they have not budged at all. In this fight, it's going to be whether or not Romanov can keep him down and whether or not he has a gas tank. I mean, he looked awful in his last performance against Volkov. I really do think the front kicks of Volkov were really giving him problems. Digging to the body and digging into that liver and that kidney area. I really think that zapped him and really demoralized him. Couldn't get any takedowns working, and then eventually got finished. Ivanov didn't look great in his last performance against Tybura. In the first round, I thought he had a little something going, but then he even started to wear down in the second and then in the third, and Tybura was able to get him to the ground in the third. So even if you thought it was 1-1 going into the third, which I believe either all three judges or two judges had it 2018 Tybura going in the third, so it really didn't matter. Even if you had it 1-1, Tybura got controlled in the third, he was going to lose anyway. So it's going to be interesting because Ivanov does have good, decent takedown defense. He's a hard guy to finish. A lot of decisions on his record. So it's going to be interesting because Romanov is so dependent on the finish and an early finish if you look at his UFC tenure. So it's all first-round finishes. The guys that have been able to take him the distance, like Juan Espino and Marcin Tybura, had success. I mean, Romanov got edged the decision against Espino because it ended up being a technical decision, but I really thought Espino could have won that fight, and he was doing some good work in that final round before it got stopped. And then Tybura weathered the storm in the first and then win the second and third. I've never seen a human more gas than Alexander Romanov. So this is a tough one because I do think Romanov can get the fight to the ground against Ivanov, and he should be able to have some success. If he has any bit of gas tank, he should be able to win the first, should be able to win the second, and if he dies in the third, I don't think Ivanov's going to be able to finish the fight. He just doesn't have the weapons, especially at this point in his career and at this age, to finish Romanov. So I don't have a bet on this because Romanov is so just volatile. Like, we don't know what shape he's going to be in when he comes in on fight night. I'm not waiting until the scales on Friday to place a bet on it. I don't see any line movement being able to sway me, but I'll keep it open. But as of right now, I'm going to pass as far as a wager on it. The line moves towards Romanov, I'm probably not going to play it. If it moves towards Ivanov, I'll consider it. Probably dog or pass at this point. As far as my pick, though, I'm going to go with Romanov just because that dominant wrestling, and if he can control the gas tank, I really don't think Ivanov's got anything that can really hurt Romanov like Volkov can. He doesn't have those front kicks. He doesn't have that range like Volkov has. So I think Romanov's going to have success. I think he's going to be able to get it done. But if the line moves, I could definitely be swayed. I could definitely be talked out of Romanov. Let's just put it that way. Moving on to the next fight, we got Ivana Petrovic versus Luana Carolina. Another interesting fight. Petrovic making her debut. The big thing on her is the grappling. She doesn't have much as far as striking. I mean, it's going to be one shot. She's going to be looking to get the fight to the ground. Luana Carolina, the opposite of that. She's going to want to look to keep the fight standing. She's a Muay Thai striker. She's got good hands. She's got good kicks. If you go back and look at the past performances, a win over Lupita Godinez, even though Godinez was taking the fight on short notice. Godinez is a wrestler, so that's a feather in her cap, even though Godinez, I think, fought on like a week's notice and had just fought a week ago. It was almost like a back-to-back for her. But Carolina ended up getting the win there, and it was up a weight class. So the asterisks keep coming for that. But anyway, I think Carolina can have some success in this fight against Petrovic. I don't think Petrovic is anything. She's your run-of-the-mill flyweight woman just like anyone whose name ends in not IC, because some of them are strikers, but anyone that ends in OV or IV or EV, any of those last names, she's going to be looking to try to get it to the ground. She's going to be looking to get that ride time, and she's going to be looking to get the fight down there and wrestle. And it's going to the big thing is going to be whether or not she can get it there, and whether or not she can do more damage than Luana Carolina can do to her. Because Carolina, she had some success against Joanne Calderwood. I thought she was pretty good. She had pretty good volume. She's able to land some shots where she's normally good in the clinch. I think Wood was a little bit better in the clinch. In this matchup, if it gets in the clinch, I think Carolina is going to be able to have some success with those knees up the middle and just the work that she does inside. And, Petrovic, like I said, I mean, she might be able to get the takedown, but the way these judges have been judging fights recently, they've been really valuing damage over, this ride time, which in control time, which I love because I am a huge proprietor in violence. So with this, I mean, the line really hasn't moved. I think it's Carolina's at plus 185, Petrovic is at minus 215. Petrovic opened minus 210, and Carolina was plus 180. So 5 cents maybe Petrovic's way. In this matchup, I'm taking Luana Carolina. I don't have a bet on it. It's still dog or pass for me. If there's a line movement that would indicate that Carolina has a side, then I'd consider it. But at this point, much like the Romanov, Ivanov fight, I'm going to go ahead and pass. So I'm going to take Carolina as my pick, though, because I do think that she can get it done. She's had more UFC experience, and I think she's going to do more damage, more volume, and she's going to be... Judges are going to value that over the ride time. So I'm going with Carolina as my pick. Moving on, we got Guram Kutateladze versus Elvis Brenner. So Brenner and Kutateladze, I mean, just like this, with this fight, it's crazy because Kutateladze has this cult following, which, I can kind of understand. He's a great striker. He can be a devastating striker. He has, a win over Mateusz Gamrot, which is a huge feather in his cap. He had a very close fight with Damir Ismagulov, arguably won that fight. But I just don't see... I don't see how the odds line up with Guram based on his performances. I mean, both those fights went to a decision, and the odds on him are minus 675 now. Brenner's a plus 500 underdog. I just think it's ridiculous. I mean, I do have him in this fight. I'm going to take Guram because I don't think Brenner's anything special. I think if Tukagov wasn't afraid to fight, wasn't afraid to get punched in the face and actually let his hands go, I think he would have won that fight against Brenner. I mean, a lot of people did think he won the fight against Brenner. I just don't like Zubair Tukagov. I think he honestly hates fighting, and there's a reason why he's out of the UFC and not fighting anymore. And in that fight against Brenner, I mean, honestly, like I said, if he just let his hands go more, he could have easily won that fight. And I think Guram is a better striker than Zubair Tukagov. So I'm going to go ahead and go with Guram in this matchup. Like I said, I don't think he's justified at minus 675, but I can't. The line, I can't bet it. You can't bet. I can't bet at minus 675. I can't even parlay minus 675. It's just outrageous. So Guram's the pick, but again, the line's just crazy. I don't know who's betting Guram at minus 675. I'm sure it's just another 3 or 4 or 5 leg parlay that someone's throwing, a hypothetical 50 units on. So we'll see. But anyway, Guram's the pick. Moving on, we got Yana Santos versus Karol Rosa. Another interesting matchup because a lot of people are riding Santos off, but I mean, Karol Rosa has had some really shaky performances in her past go. I mean, if you look at the Norma Dumont fight, I mean, Norma Dumont was able to close the distance and basically hold her up against the cage and land some clinch strikes and had a lot of success doing it. And if there's one thing that Yana Santos can do, and you see in her fights, is hold people up against the cage and land strikes in the clinch. On the outside, I think Karol Rosa is definitely the more devastating striker. I think she's got more pop in her hands, but I think Yana Santos can kind of stay on the outside, dart in and volume just to keep up with Rosa. And then in the clinch, I think she can definitely have some success because Rosa is very, very willing to kind of let you dictate the fight. Against Lena Landsberg, I mean, she was a huge favorite. I think she was minus 350, somewhere around there. And Lena Landsberg ended up dropping her in that fight. It's extremely close. It ended up being about 29-28. unanimous decision for Carol Rosa, I believe. Might even have been split, but in the end, Rosa ended up eking that fight out. Against Dumont, I mean, she had success in the third. She was able to hurt Dumont, and she ended up winning that round, but it was a little bit too late. Dumont had already banked 2 rounds. She ended up losing another 29-28 decision. So against Yana Santos, I mean, I really don't have the faith that people have in Carol Rosa. I think Yana Santos can have the same success that Norma Dumont had against Carol Rosa, where she's holding her up against the fence. She's able to land those clinch strikes. She's able to stay on the outside and limit Rosa to not doing much damage on the outside or when they're at range. And she's going to win the clinch battle. And she's going to have that more time up against the cage. So, I mean, unless Rosa can really do some damage to Santos, which she can, that's definitely a path to victory. I think if she beats Yana Santos up and she might lose the control time, overall in the fight, then yeah, she's going to win the fight. But I don't see her being able to throw the volume. I don't see Santos giving her any room to really breathe or engage in that type of fight where she can land, those combinations or those hooks where she was trading with Dumont, like seeing who was going to back up first, just letting them rip. I don't think Yana Santos is going to do that. So, I mean, as far as the line goes, it hasn't budged. Yana Santos is plus 150. Carol Rosa is minus 175. I got Yana Santos in this fight, and I also got a wager on her at plus 150. The line's was moving towards her way. She got as low as plus 135. A little bit of buyback on Rosa, so not much CLV there, but I am going to go with Yana Santos on this. I think she's got a real shot in this fight. Don't really like Carol Rosa's past performances, so I'm going to go ahead and take a shot on the underdog there at plus 150. So, moving on. Another cooked fight, man. Joe Anderson Brito is facing off against Weston Wilson, who's making his UFC debut. The line is ridiculous. Joe Anderson Brito's minus 1250 and Wilson is plus 800. A lot of people are saying that this fight shouldn't even have been sanctioned. Weston Wilson 16-7, I believe, is his overall record. Hasn't really fought much competition. The competition that he has fought against Ishikawa was like the main name that he fought, and he got knocked out pretty violently in that fight. Joe Anderson Brito is a firecracker. I mean, he's got pop in his hands. He burns really hot. He's not afraid to get in your face. And if he doesn't respect what's coming back, he's going to be in your face and he's just going to be letting his hands go. He's mixing in the takedowns. He can really get it done anywhere. And against Weston Wilson, I think that karate style stance that Wilson has where he just kind of jumps in and, it's chop the legs, kind of pitter-patter with the legs, and then jump in with a 1-2, sometimes overextend. He is kind of wiry, but at the same time, I just think Brito's just not going to have any respect for Wilson. I think he's going to move forward, and Wilson in some of these fights against lesser competition, he does get hit, and he gets hit often. And if you're getting hit by that type of competition on the regional scene, I mean, Joe Anderson Brito is going to close the distance, and he's going to throw those hooks, and if he lands, you're going to go out. I think Brito has this one pretty handedly. Wilson's getting his shot, in the big leagues, so that's awesome for him, but it's a hell of a tough fight and a steep mountain to climb for him in his debut. So going with Joe Anderson Brito, it's an unbettable line, minus 1250. I can't even parlay that. It's not even worth it. Not even worth it. There's nothing that could convince me to put a bet in on that fight with that line. That's how ridiculous it is. Anyway, moving on, we got Kevin Lee versus Rinat Fakhretdinov. This is our featured prelim of the night. Kevin Lee, as it stands right now, he's plus 175. Fakhretdinov minus 205. So as far as the line movement, there hasn't been much. I mean, what I go off of, like I've mentioned previously, and I probably should have mentioned before in the video, is I'm taking these lines as of either Saturday night or Sunday morning. And then I let the week play out leading up until the fight, and then I see where the line's moving. So there really hasn't been much. I mean, it's been 5 cents in Fakhretdinov's favor. He opened minus 200. He's now minus 205. Kevin Lee opened plus 170, or my open, I should say, on Sunday. Open plus 170. Now he's plus 175. This is going to be a tough one for Lee, in my opinion. I mean, the big thing that people are harping on is the double knee surgery that he had. I do put some stock into it, but not too much. He wouldn't be coming back. He wouldn't have gotten signed to the UFC if he didn't think that he could handle it. He was a very high-level fighter at one point. He fought at welterweight, but he also fought at lightweight. It's the exact opposite for Fakhretdinov. He actually fought at middleweight, and he's coming down to welterweight, while Kevin Lee fought at lightweight, and he comes up to welterweight. So you can see that there might be a size difference. if you're looking at it. I mean, Kevin Lee had a lot of time off to really bulk up, so it's not like he fought at lightweight, 3 months ago, and now he's coming up to welterweight. I mean, he's got time to kind of prepare, knew that he was going to be fighting at 170, so I don't know if that's going to be huge. I'm not going to put a ton of stock into it. What I will put a ton of stock into is Rinat Fakhretdinov's fight style, his past performances, and how they stack up against Kevin Lee. So Fakhretdinov, I mean, it's no surprise he's going to try to get the fight to the ground. He's got great sambo, that Russian wrestling, getting it to the ground, controlling, hunting for submission, always position over submission. And on the feet, he's just, looking to close distance. He throws big hooks. He throws with power. He is susceptible to getting hit, but he's just going to keep coming forward with this relentless wrestling style until he can get you on the ground. Kevin Lee burns really hot, really electric. Definitely a better striker than Rinat Fakhretdinov. Definitely very athletic dude. Probably more athletic than Rinat Fakhretdinov. The only issue I have with Kevin Lee is I don't think he can sustain it for more than 1.5 rounds. And Fakhretdinov's just going to keep coming and coming and coming with that wrestling. The big highlight that everyone's looking at is the KO over Gregor Gillespie. Yeah, Gregor Gillespie is also a wrestler, but can Kevin Lee put together a combination like that with that slick head kick that he hides behind the punch and knock Rinat Fakhretdinov out now? I don't know if he can. I think I just don't really understand the fight too much. I think this is definitely Fakhretdinov's fight to lose, and if it gets out of round 1, I really favor Fakhretdinov in this. I think Kevin Lee's not going to have the gas tank to put forth, the effort that he's going to put forth in the first round. I think he's going to have a lot of pop on his shots in the first. He's probably going to be defending a lot of takedowns in the first, and it wouldn't surprise me if Fakhretdinov got stuffed on the first, 1, 2, maybe even 3 takedowns. But the issue with that is Fakhretdinov's going to keep coming. And if you're defending the takedown, you're not able to punch. You're not able to let your own offense off because you have to defend the guy who's trying to take you down. So I really do favor Fakhretdinov in this fight. I don't think Kevin Lee has much of a shot. I mean, at this line, I'm staying off of it just because Kevin Lee is explosive. There's been no movement, nothing to indicate that, anyone has any hard opinions on either side. We'll see come Saturday, but again, this might be another one where it's dog or pass because I really don't like to take straight plays into the 2-1 favorite area, and I really don't have confidence to parlay Fakhretdinov. I thought about it, taking a look at it, but I just can't pull the trigger on it. So I'm going to go with Fakhretdinov on the pick, even though, I gave a slurry of reasons why Fakhretdinov is the side and why I really like him. But as far as a bet, I'm going to stay off of it. But he is my pick. So moving on, we got Bruno Ferreira facing off against Nursultan Ruziboev. So this is another interesting one. So we got about a good amount of line movement because this is a late fight that was added. So when Ferreira opened up, or when I saw it, he was minus 175. He's now minus 225 right now. Ruziboev, you can get him at plus 185 as it stands right now. So about 50 cents worth of movement on the Ferreira side. And when you look at it, I mean, Bruno Ferreira has just absolute cement blocks for hands. I mean, if you go back and look at his past performances on Dana White's Contender Series against Bellato, he floored that dude, and it wasn't even close. It was just like all he needed to do was have one opening and land one shot, and you're out. Same thing against Gregory Rodriguez. He fought Gregory Rodriguez, and he fought Gregory Rodriguez on short notice. Rodriguez having some success in the first, guys are going back and forth, and then all of a sudden, Rodriguez has him up against the cage, and Ferreira is looking to throw, right? He throws a short right, and then he kind of comes back, and then all of a sudden you see this quick left, bang, hit Rodriguez, and Rodriguez just goes down. Like, it didn't even look like Ferreira was trying to throw with full force. Ferreira just throws his hands, and he's very quick, and that's what I like about him. He just kind of lets his hands go and just knows that he has the power. He doesn't have to load up on shots. He doesn't have to fire from his hip. It's just kind of like boom, 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 and you're out. He's just got incredible speed for a middleweight. The guy he's fighting, Nursultan Ruziboev, is just a wild card, man. I mean, he doesn't really have much on the feet. He is kind of like one shot. He does throw a lot into his shots. He throws a lot into his 1-2, but it's jab 1-2, jab 1-2. There's not really a lot of like hooks that are being thrown. He does kick, and that's what he's going to do to try to close the distance. I mean, he's going to walk down. He's not afraid to walk you down either, but he kind of keeps his chin up and his hands kind of out, and that's how he's going to strike. And on the ground, I mean, this guy is just an absolute wild card. You watch sequences and you're like, okay, this guy, knows what he's doing on the ground. He's probably, a brown belt, maybe even a black belt. And then there's other times where it's just like, what is this guy doing? Like, it's crazy. Like, he loves the Kimura. He will go to it in any scenario to try to finish a fight or even try to get a reversal. He also has no problem. He has no real issue with getting taken down himself. He'll gladly get taken down, and he'll gladly get mounted. You can mount Ruziboev really easily, but Ruziboev, for whatever reason, has a slick reversal that he can hit, and he kind of just waits for the right time. I mean, it looks like the guys get a little high on him when they have him in the mount, but they're teeing off on him, and he's covering up, but he just knows the exact time to kind of bridge and kind of roll you over. And in the one fight that he had, it was like Pro FC 66. He was fighting another Russian guy. I can't remember his name, but he must have been mounted 3 or 4 times, and the dude just reversed it every single time. It's just wild. But he puts himself in these bad positions. He is susceptible to a guy almost hit a Kimura on him, even though that's like his move. He's hit an armbar. He's fought lower levels of competition, but it's just like he's an interesting cat because he's fought well over 40 times. He's like 34-8 is his record. The guys he fought hasn't been the highest level of competition, but yeah, he's just an absolute wild card. And it's really tough to really get a gauge on him. I think in this fight, I mean, Ferreira is no slouch on the ground himself. I think he has wrestling. I think he has the jiu-jitsu, and I think he definitely has the advantage on the feet. So I'm gonna go with Ferreira on this, and I have a bet on him at -175 just because I think Ruziboev isn't going to be able to get the fight to where he needs to get the fight, which is the ground. And even if he does, I think Ferreira has nasty ground and pound, and he showed that before in his previous fights. If it goes down there, Ruziboev puts himself in such bad positions that Ferreira is going to be able to tee off on him, and that's not the guy you want teeing off on your face when you're flat on your back on the ground. So I got Ferreira. That's my pick. And got him in at -175. Next fight we got is Ismail Bonfim facing off against Benoit Saint-Denis. I think this is going to be a pretty solid fight. Bonfim -315 as it stands right now. Saint-Denis at +260. Line hasn't really moved. About 5 cents worth of movement in Denis's favor. So Bonfim opened. He was right around -310 when it opened up on Sunday. Denis was +255. Now that has swayed. I've seen Saint-Denis get some love, and I've seen Bonfim get some love back. But as it stands right now, they're about even. In this fight, it's just Benoit Saint-Denis has an awesome ground game. His striking is starting to come along, but he still has those holes. He still gets hit. You look at the Zaleski dos Santos fight. I mean, that pretty much was a snuff film. He got teed off on that fight. Should have been stopped. That probably took a couple years off his career. That was just absolutely nasty. So you know that he's got the holes in his striking, but he's not afraid to move forward. And he has good wrestling, and he has very good jiu-jitsu once it gets down to the ground. He's like very similar to like Sean Brady. He's very strong for the weight class, and when he gets you down, it's very hard to get back up. Ismail Bonfim on the flip side is just all around, man. It's tough to really be too nitpicky about Ismail Bonfim. Like, he is very, very good. He's got very good stand-up, very good boxing. That's his bread and butter. And if you want to keep the fight standing, he's more than welcome to he's more than willing to do that. I mean, against McKinney, just a masterclass of staying at range, knowing that McKinney's going to throw those big shots, just being able to avoid the big shots, circle out, fend off the takedown, and then just land those beautiful boxing combinations. Back McKinney up, and then just at the right moment landing that beautiful knee on his chin. It was just like just a perfect performance, an absolute dominating performance, and a statement win by Ismail Bonfim, who, as far as like his record, I mean, he has 3 losses, right? And 2 of them came in the first 3 fights of his pro career. One loss was Adriano Moraes, former ONE FC flyweight champion. I should say bantamweight champion. They don't have flyweight over there. Bantamweight champion. And the other one was Renato Moicano. So this guy's only lost to top tier competition, and he has beat some very good guys on the regional scene as well. So in this fight, it's just really tough because Bonfim able to fend off the takedown. He did it in his Contender Series fight too. He fought a very, very, very solid prospect whose record was like 25-4, and just the same thing. He was able to defend the takedown. He was able to win it out on the feet. Just beautiful boxing combinations, and he's just a level above the competition, man. And I don't know if Benoit Saint Denis. I mean, it is a crazy line. And to see Saint Denis be that big of an underdog is kind of shocking to me, especially with a guy who has such wrestling and grappling upside. But it's just, I don't know if he's going to be able to hold Bonfim down. I don't know if he's going to be able to get the fight to the ground. And if it stays standing, Bonfim's going to be able to counter-strike and be able to find the holes in Saint Denis striking and exploit them. I don't know if he's going to be able to get the finish, because if Saint Denis couldn't get finished against Easy K in that fight, or Easy Zaleski dos Santos. I'm butchering the nickname. Anyway, if he couldn't finish him, then it's going to be tough to finish Saint Denis. He's a tough MFer. But I really do have Bonfim in this fight. I'm really high on him and his brother. I think they're going to do a lot of good things in the UFC. Line's a little crazy. I don't have a bet on it. Moving on, we got Ariana Lipski versus Melissa Gatto. So again, clash of styles. Gatto's really good on the ground with the jiu-jitsu. She's no slouch on the feet too. She's got decent striking, but Ariana Lipski, Queen of Violence, I would give her the edge in the striking there. As far as the line's concerned, Lipski's plus 185 and Gatto's minus 215. Been about 15 cents worth of movement on Gatto. She opened minus 200. So as far as the side, I mean, I really do think Gatto can win this fight, and win this fight pretty easily if she gets it down to the ground. Ariana Lipski is pretty much a fish out of water. I mean, you lose to Antonina Shevchenko because you got out wrestled and ground and pound. That's a huge red flag for me. In her previous fights, it's the same recipe. As you get Lipski down, she's not able to get back up, and you can really do some good work down there. And Melissa Gatto, if she definitely has the tools on the ground to finish the fight. And even if she doesn't finish the fight, she's going to stay on top. She's going to be able to lay ground and pound. She's going to be able to cruise her way to a decision if she can get it there. If it stays standing, it's going to be tough. I think Lipski can win the fight. I mean, she had a good showing against J.J. Aldridge, pretty much an all-around performance against Aldridge, who looked a little off that night. But I still got to go with Melissa Gatto on this one, especially with the threat of her ground game. Gatto, the only hesitancy that I have with her is she doesn't really force the issue to get it to the ground as much as you would like to see. She is comfortable on the feet, and she will trade and she will strike with some of her opponents a little bit longer than I would like. I'd like to see her try to get the respect on the feet, but then start to going for more takedowns, get it down to the ground, get it to where she's at her best, her bread and butter. But I just think that, with the grappling upside of Gatto, I got to go with her on this one. So taking Gatto as the pick, but I don't have a play on it. Moving on, we got Max Griffin facing off against Michael Morales. Another interesting one. I mean, Morales is the favorite, minus 250 as it stands. Griffin plus 210. About 20 cents worth of movement towards Morales. He opened around minus 230. So with this one, I mean, Max Griffin, he's got pop in his hands. There's no denying that. But Michael Morales is very well-rounded. He's an undefeated fighter. Had a good showing against Trevin Giles. Ended up getting a first-round finish. And then also against Adam Fugit. He put up a pretty good fight against Morales, but Morales was able to finish him late. So the big thing that I think is going to be the factor in this fight is going to be who can conserve the gas tank. And Max Griffin, he's got pop in his hands, right? He dropped Neil Magny. He was on his way to winning that fight, but he just gassed out in the second and third, and Magny just wore on him. I think Michael Morales has good grappling. He definitely is more comfortable at range, more comfortable than Neil Magny is. Neil Magny is going to try to suffocate you. I think Morales is going to be able to stay at distance and want to land his own shots. I think if he can avoid the big shot from Griffin, I think he can take this one pretty easily. I shouldn't say pretty easily, but I think he can definitely win a unanimous decision or even finish Griffin late, right around the end of the second or the third round. I mean, Griffin, he's been around forever. He's definitely a good litmus test. He's a guy who is 37 years old, pushing 38. You just don't know how much more he's got left in the tank. Michael Morales is a young guy. He definitely has shown that he can go 3 rounds hard, and it's going to be a real difficult fight for Max Griffin. I think Griffin has a shot. especially early, he could definitely drop him. Like I said, he's got lead in his gloves. I mean, the Song Kanon fight, if you looked at that, I mean, he touched him up in the first, rocked him, and then just put him to sleep, just put the nail in the coffin with one of those patented rights that he throws. So, he definitely has a shot in this one, but I really do favor Michael Morales, especially as the fight goes on, especially if it's a back and forth where they're kind of wearing on each other and Morales is mixing in the wrestling, the clinch, a lot of clinch work. I think Morales can definitely take it. So he's going to be my pick, but again, I don't have a bet on that fight. Moving on, we got Denis Ismagulov versus Grant Dawson. So another war on Twitter between these two guys. So Ismagulov, as it stands, minus 115. Dawson's minus 105. So basically a pick 'em. It opened up, Dawson was plus 115, so 20 cents worth of movement towards Dawson. But Ismagulov still is the favorite. So in this one, again, it's going to be whether or not Grant Dawson can get the guy to the ground. So Denis Ismagulov has great striking. He's great at striking off his back foot. Good counter striker. He got an excellent jab. Just beat Kutateladze up with that jab in their fight. Just could not, just jab, angle off. And Denis Ismagulov just on the feet just is a very good boxer. Grant Dawson is not the greatest boxer or the greatest on the feet. He is a lot of duck his head and throw the overhand. He has that wrestler striking where the threat of the takedown he uses to open up his striking, right? So he's going to duck his head and throw an overhand right, pretend like he's shooting, feint a lot of shots, but ultimately he's going to try to get in and get that takedown and get you to the ground where he can control you, kind of work his jiu-jitsu and try to finish the fight via submission. He also has decent ground and pound. He did end up beating Leo Santos at the very, very tail end of their fight in the third round. He was on his way to a victory anyway by unanimous decision, but ended up just hammering on him with that ground and pound and put his lights out with, I think, a second left. So it was like a real buzzer beater finish for Grant Dawson. A decent win there for him. So I think Grant Dawson, he definitely has a shot in this fight. I know people like to point to Denis Ismagulov and his takedown defense. Against Arman Tsarukyan, Tsarukyan was, 7 of 21 on takedowns. But when he got the fight down, he got that control time. Like, close to 10 minutes of control time in that fight for Tsarukyan. And Grant Dawson's doesn't have the striking that Tsarukyan does, but he's cut from that same cloth, where he's going to just keep going with the takedowns. I think he's eventually going to be able to wear on Ismagulov and get him down. And once he gets him down, he's going to be able to do enough work to be able to eke out a decision. Grant Dawson himself said in the press conference, he said, Ismagulov's going to be a tough guy to finish, and I agree with him. Ismagulov's only lost twice, and I think they might both be by decision. I know one of them's by decision against Tsarukyan. Not sure of the other loss that he had later on in his career, or earlier on in his career, I should say. But I do favor Dawson. The line's moving in his favor. I think he's getting a little disrespected. I don't think people really respect his wrestling. I know that the striking is what everyone points to, but he definitely has that dominating wrestling, that dominating Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and he's strong as hell, too. So I really do think if he can get the fight to the ground, he can wear on Ismagulov, and as long as he's got something left in the tank by the third round, I think he's going to be able to take it. So got Grant Dawson as the pick, and I also got him at plus 110. For a bet. Anyway, and then moving on to our main event, which is Sean Strickland versus Abus Magomedov. Strickland opened right around minus 165. Abus Magomedov on the comeback was plus 145, but there has been some movement, about 20 cents worth, or 25 cents worth, I should say. Magomedov's at plus 130. Strickland on the comeback, minus 150 as the favorite. So in this fight, line's moving towards Magomedov, but you know what you're getting out of Sean Strickland. He's going to be in your face. He's going to be proud in that jab. He's going to be looking to cut down on you being able to kick him, you being able to hang out at range and pick him apart. He's going to just look to turn this into a phone booth fight. He's going to be poking that jab at you. He's going to be in your face. He's going to have that good high guard, that good defense. And he's just going to be looking to touch you. He's going to be looking to outpoint you, outvolume you. He'll throw the right hand every once in a while, but for the most part, it's going to be that jab. He's just going to keep jabbing you and keep touching you. And I don't think really anyone has fought someone like Sean Strickland until you fight Sean Strickland and really kind of understand how he kind of lulls you into his game. He's one of those guys where he makes you fight the fight on his terms. And there really isn't anything that you could do differently to change that, unless you really hurt him and earn his respect, and it's really difficult to do that. I mean, guys that have been huge power punchers like Uriah Hall, they don't get his respect, and he's in your face the whole time. You're the one moving around. He's cutting you off. You're doing a lot of movement. You got to stay right there. You can't throw those kicks, because if you do throw a kick, he's going to counter you with a jab, and he's going to just an accumulation over time. He's just going to poke you. Magomedov, very good all-around game. Solid on the ground. I mean, you think because of the last name Magomedov that he'd be a guy who wants to get it to the ground, but he's really not going to shoot for many takedowns. He likes to keep it standing. You know, he's a very good kickboxer, a very good striking. He had that devastating front kick knockout against Dustin Stoltzfus, ended the fight in about 18 seconds, right up the middle, bang, right on the chin, and then ended up dropping him with a flurry of strikes. But the big thing in this fight that I keep going back to is I don't know what Abus Magomedov does different than, say, like a Nasruddin Imavov, who Strickland already beat. Like, they're both, the striking styles are different. Like, Imavov's more like karate, like on the toe, balls of his feet, maybe in and out. And then, like, as far as the clinch game goes, they have different ways of dealing with that. But I really don't see a world where he's going to have the space to land some of those devastating kicks. I think he can chop the leg of Strickland, but guys have tried that before. It's just going to be really tough. And then he's going to have to stand in the pocket with him and trade. Sure, he could land a big shot like Alex Pereira does. You absolutely could. But when you're in the pocket with Strickland, it just seems like that's his world. It's just like, a high-paced sparring match, and that's where he really lives, and that's where he really loves to fight guys. And guys really don't have a way of getting out of that just perpetual, 5-round sparring match, really. So I took Strickland at -170. So the line's moving against me, and I don't like it, to say the least. But I'm going to stay with my pick just because I think Sean Strickland is just such an awkward fight for people. And I don't think people really give him credit for, being how good he is at winning fights and being there in the 5th round. I mean, if this goes to a decision, I'm confident Strickland will win it. I think Magomedov really, he probably has the finishing equity in this fight. No, he definitely has the finishing equity in this fight. I mean, if he's going to get the win, he's going to be by finish. I just don't see that happening, and he's untested in 5 rounds. It's a 5-round fight. If it goes to the championship rounds, we don't know how much he's going to have left in the tank. He's going to be circling around the cage the most part because Strickland's going to be the one moving forward. So we will see. But I'm going to go with Sean Strickland, even though the line's telling me Magomedov might be the side. At -170, that is my final bet that I have right now. So that does it for UFC Fight Night, or UFC Vegas 77, Strickland versus Abus Magomedov. I hope you guys picked up on some things that you may not have been able to pick up on the other breakdowns that you're watching, and I hope everyone cashes out on Saturday. So Bobby Betts Fights is out. I will see you guys next week.